In this video, I'm going to walk you through the 2 habits that have made me over $1.5 million cash collected in my online coaching business over the last couple of years. I'm going to walk you through specifically what the weekly wrap-up process is and why I would highly encourage that you start following this within your business. I'm then going to walk you through how I look at managing my time, and then at the end of the video, I'll give you access to a free resource that pretty much ties all of this together. Now, if we haven't met before, my name is Josh Bowers. I've been in the online coaching space since December of 2019. I've made a little bit over $1.5 million cash collected in that time frame. I've had 2 different online coaching offers. The Bikini Body Project was my first program. Had about 300 clients go through that. No team helping me with that business. It was just me and basically all of my clients. At its peak, I had 100 active clients, so it was very systemized and running very smoothly. December of 22, I decided to shut that down. A few months later, I jumped the fence into business coaching, and now that's exactly what I do today, is helping other fitness coaches do exactly what I did. We use a combination of hyper-targeted content and hyper-targeted ads. We bring the 2 together because I believe that's rocket fuel for a coaching business. Now, the purpose of these videos is to walk you through all of the things that have and have not worked for me and my clients over the years, because there's been many wins and also many failures. Plus, I also just want to walk you through what I'm currently doing in my business and also my clients as well. So let's dive in. The weekly wrap-up. What this is a process that I sit down and do at the end of every week, generally on a Saturday, where I'll dedicate 30 to 60 minutes to pretty much have a complete revision and review on how the business is going and also my life as well. So first thing I'm looking at doing here is just double checking all the KPIs in the business. I want to know how much cash we made, how many sales we made, cash contracted, how many clients left. I want to look at the performance of ads. I want to look at the performance of my offer docs. I want to look at how many people clicked on my VSL videos. I am a huge believer that you need to measure as many KPIs as you can. There's hundreds of different KPIs you could obviously measure and manage, but for me, I'm just focusing on the ones that have the biggest bang for the buck in the business. And obviously, what you don't measure, you can't manage. So at the end of the day, you do need to be tracking all of your stats, especially if you're someone that's hungry and wants to actually scale. You'll be flying blind if you don't really know where the business is at with the KPIs specifically. Like, this is a huge one because it can just allow you to remove any emotions that you might be feeling in the business and then just double down on the actual facts and data, which is what KPIs then show. The next thing we're then looking at is the overall performance of the business. Did we grow this week? Did we shrink this week? Where are we winning? Where are we struggling? And it's pretty much just a very binary yes or no, black and white type review process with the business, because again, I don't want any feelings and emotions getting in the way of me reviewing this. So I've got a whole bunch of questions in this weekly wrap-up process. And you know what, this is sort of what it looks like here if we go create a new month. And this is the resource that you'll get access to at the end as well. So if you were to click on the button here, we create a new week. So here, we've got the business. So what did you complete? So did we move the needle forward this week? Did we follow a daily cadence? Where are we struggling? If we were advising someone else in this same issue, what would we advise them to do? What's working really well and why? It's important that we do know what is actually working and what's not. I then assess the 5 core functions of my business, and in any coaching business, these are the 5 core areas that we have: lead gen, lead nurture, lead conversion, delivery, retention, and upsell. We give these a rating out of 5, and then we can pretty much have a good understanding on where the performance is in these different areas within the business. We then get into sales and marketing. We get into lifetime value. There's all sorts of different revision questions in there for the business itself. I then dive into a personal check-in. Now, there's a very good chance that you're probably a solo operator, just like me, if you're watching this. So we also need to know how you are doing. You need to check in with yourself. You're not a robot. You might be locking in and grinding and doing all of that, but if you're not actually, pouring into your own cup, but also just making sure that you're doing okay, then the business could be struggling and you don't know why, but it's actually you that's the problem. And quite often it's the founder that is the issue and the block in the business that's preventing it from actually scaling. So go through a whole bunch of revision questions around life and things like that through there. So we obviously want to know how the business is doing, but then also how you're doing as well. At the end of this process, I then move into planning out my week. Now, before I just jump into planning things out, I like to have an area, I call it a project management sort of area. It could be the notes on your computer, it could be in a Notion document, it could be a Google Doc, wherever you want to put it, it doesn't really matter. But for me, I have essentially all of the little projects that I want to be working on, and I have them in this big list. And then what I do is I focus on following the 80-20 split when I'm figuring out what I do want to do this week, because a lot of people will focus on the wrong tasks within their business, and they are busy all week, but they're not really moving the needle like they could be and or want to be. And it's because they're focusing on tasks that don't really give you the largest return on investment. So you might have something in your projects about needing to update a resource to make it look nicer and focus on the graphic design, but you could spend 2 or 3 days fiddling around in Canva with that, but that's not going to bring you in any new sales, any new revenue, any more leads into the business. So whenever I'm planning my week, I'm always running all of the projects and the tasks that I need to do through the filter of, is this actually an important task this week or not? Be very, very strict on this process. Like, there's a lot of things that you could be doing in a coaching business, and most of those things do not need to be actioned, right? They're usually things that can be actioned maybe at the end of the day or at the end of the week once all of the bigger projects have been taken care of. So the 80-20 split, if you don't really understand how that works, is 20% of the work you do in your business is essentially going to produce 80% of the outcomes and or money that you want in the business, which means 80% of the tasks and the work that you do or think you need to do or want to do quite often have no translation into more money and more revenue within the business. So just be very cautious when you are going through this process. But this weekly wrap-up process is something that I've done religiously for most likely the last 3 years. Longer, actually. It would be more like 4 years now if I really reflect on my time. I've been in online coaching since December 2019. It's about 5-ish years, a little over 5 years now. And honestly, this weekly wrap-up process has reduced so much anxiety, so much overwhelm, and it's given me so much clarity with what to do in the business. Because you can be very busy and you can get stuck being in a position of, in a state of busyness, but you're never actually really achieving things. And this is where that weekly wrap-up process comes in handy, because you're actually objectively looking at like, okay, did the business go well last week or not? And what do I need to do next week to move the business forward? It makes it very objective focus, which just saves a lot of overwhelm. Next thing is time management. So for me, I'm a huge fan of running a Google Calendar. So this is how my calendar looks as of time of filming this. So this is for next week. These are the kind of the bare minimums that I have in the calendar every week. I have my morning process locked in from 5 to 7 a.m. I then have content planned out for the first 2 hours of the day. Sometimes I have to move these around just based on calls and other things that are going down. But for me, a huge thing that I do focus on when it comes to time management is looking at planning my days in themes. So I have these core tasks in the calendar almost every day. Client care and admin sweep. This is where I'm looking at checking emails, checking in with clients and that sort of thing. Then the content stuff is every single day because I'm posting every day. But then after this, what I have is in these days, this is just a mental plan, but when I sit down and plan this week out for next week, Mondays is more of a thinking day. Tuesdays is my call day. Wednesdays is like a more of a content building sort of day. Same thing on Thursday. Friday is then a calls day. And then Saturday, this is usually uninterrupted time. So I like to think here, plan and work on really big projects where I know that I'm not necessarily going to be interrupted by other people. The other thing that I focus heavily on is having call only days. Now, if I was to go back to when I was running the Bikini Body Project, I would have every day available for calls except the weekends. So you could book a sales call with me on any day. You could book a client check-in call with me on any day. Anywhere from 8 to 5 p.m. my whole week was pretty much open. And what I used to find is that I'd get really overwhelmed and really, I would say, just exhausted at the end of the day, because I would be doing a client call and then I'd be doing a check-in and then a meal plan, and then I'd be over here responding to a message, and then I'd be bouncing back to doing this, and then over here creating some content and then running an ad here. And just my days were sort of just very scattered between different tasks. I was doing stuff and I was busy, but I wasn't really moving the needle because I was just so scattered across so many different things. So one of my previous mentors was doing this, and he only had calls on Tuesdays and Fridays. And I thought this was a bit unusual at first. And I was like, well, what if someone wants to meet with you sooner? But then I had to just remind myself of the fact that, like, it's my business. I got into business to do what I want, to run things how I want to. So why would I follow a structure that's going to have other people determine and dictate how I should run my own business? Like, obviously you need to have availability for your clients to book in, and it can't be at absurd times. But at the same time, I'm the boss. I control my calendar, so I'm going to do calls on days that I want to do calls. So what works perfectly for me with this calendar is that if I do calls on Tuesdays and Fridays, generally that's Mondays and Thursdays for those in the US, Canada, and obviously on the other side of the globe, and me being in Australia, Tuesdays and Fridays tends to work well because most of my calls will be in the mornings on those 2 days. And then for the Americans, that's usually in the evenings, which is then in the mornings for me. So it tends to work perfectly fine. But what I am very rigid on is Tuesdays and Fridays, I only allocate calls in there. Like, you'll see that I've got content blocked in here, but at the moment, these are already overridden by meetings that I've got. So I'll have to move this content stuff down because for me, I do want to be posting every day and I want to do it on the actual day. However, I won't do any other big planning sessions in here. I won't work on any other big projects. I'm not doing anything that's going to require a large amount of brain capacity, because if you've done a lot of calls back to back, you would know that it can be quite draining. And it's nice just to sit here and just to go, you know what? All I have to do is just talk all day. Fantastic. I'm not doing a call and then this and then this and then this and then that and then just bouncing around all over the place like a squirrel, which gets very overwhelming. So just remember that when you are sort of planning out your time and your calendar and stuff like that, is that it's your business. You can do things how you want to do it. Now, the final thing here is eating the frog. And if you haven't heard this term before, it's a term in productivity world. I think it was Mark Twain who sort of coined this term. And essentially what this means is that just get after the most annoying task first in the day. Just eat. If you need to eat a frog in the day, eat it straight away so you can get it over and done with, where you have the most capacity to do it, and just get it done first thing. And that's why you'll see in this calendar structure here, content is the very first thing that I sit down and do pretty much every single day, unless I get some meetings booked in over that. But content's the first thing in my day every day, and that's the frog for me. I want to get that done. I want to get that out of the way and then get into the rest of the day. The other thing as well is you'll notice that my client care stuff is usually a bit later in the morning, because I'm also cherishing this morning time, and it's very sacred for me, where I only want to focus on eating that big frog. Now, down below this video will be a link to the weekly wrap-up resource that you just saw here. So this thing, let me go back a few clicks. This is what it looks like here. So this is on the Notion platform. So you will have to have an account with Notion if you don't already. But open this up, and in the top right corner, there's going to be a little button that you can select that will say duplicate. Once you click that, it's going to ask you to select your account, load that in there, and then get that one happening, because this is pretty much the exact same process that I've been following for 4 years now, as we discussed, and it's made me a lot of money. If I could boil this down to one habit that I've stuck to over the years, it would be this thing. So go ahead, swipe that now, and I'll see you inside of the next video.